One waitress's simple act of courage in a crowded restaurant changed her life forever, because the man she defended turned out to be a billionaire in disguise. Anna moved quickly between the tables, balancing a tray of steaming plates and glasses filled to the brim. The restaurant was alive with chatter, the clinking of cutlery, and the soft background music that almost got lost beneath the buzz of customers. She had been working here for nearly 3 years, and although her feet ached by the end of every shift, she carried herself with a smile that made people feel welcome. For Anna, this job wasn't just about earning tips. It was about survival. Her rent was due every month, her younger brother's school fees had to be paid, and her mother's medicine bills never seemed to stop piling up. Her life had never been easy, but she had taught herself not to complain. People who came to the restaurant usually saw only the cheerful side of her. The young waitress who remembered orders quickly, who never got angry when customers were rude, who always seemed to know when to refill a coffee cup. What they didn't see was how she walked home every night, exhausted and calculating in her head how much she had earned and whether it would cover the next week's needs. It was a Thursday evening, one of the busiest times in the restaurant. The after-work crowd had filled almost every table, and the smell of roasted meat and fresh bread hung thick in the air. Anna tied her apron tighter and hurried to a corner booth where a man had just taken a seat. He was dressed in simple jeans and a worn jacket, the kind of clothing that made him blend in easily with the crowd. His hair was slightly messy, and he looked tired, as though the day had weighed heavily on him. Anna didn't recognize him, not that she had the time to study each customer. She greeted him politely, offered a warm smile, and handed him the menu. He thanked her with a nod, his voice calm and gentle. There was something different about him, though Anna couldn't quite put her finger on it. He didn't behave like the other customers who snapped fingers or waved impatiently when they wanted service. He seemed patient, even thoughtful, as though he wasn't in a hurry. As Anna moved around the restaurant, she noticed how unnoticed the man remained. Other diners passed by his table without a second glance. He didn't fit the image of wealth or power. No shiny watch on his wrist, no expensive shoes, no air of arrogance. He looked like any ordinary person, someone who might be struggling with life just like so many others. But what no one knew, not Anna, not the customers, not even the manager, was that this quiet, unassuming man was actually one of the most successful billionaires in the country. His company stretched across industries. His name was known in business circles worldwide, and his fortune could buy the entire restaurant 100 times over. He had chosen to dress simply that evening, wanting to escape the constant attention that came with his fame. He wanted to eat like a regular person, to experience life outside the polished walls of boardrooms and luxury hotels. Anna didn't know this. For her, he was just another diner. She brought him water, asked if he'd like the house special, and jotted down his order with the same care she gave every customer. What mattered to her wasn't who people were on the outside, but how they treated others. She had seen enough arrogance from wealthy patrons who thought leaving a few extra dollars as a tip gave them the right to be rude. She had also seen kindness from people who had little but shared it generously. Over time, Anna had learned not to judge too quickly. Her shift continued in its usual rhythm. She served a family celebrating a birthday, carried drinks to a group of office workers laughing too loudly, and calmed a couple arguing quietly at a corner table. The work was nonstop, and her back was already sore, but she kept moving. Every time she passed the man's table, he gave her a polite smile, and for some reason, that small gesture lifted her spirits. At one point, Anna overheard a conversation between two waiters near the kitchen. They were whispering about a rumor that a wealthy businessman had been seen in the city, someone important and influential. Anna half listened as she stacked plates, but she quickly shook the thought from her mind. The man sitting in the corner couldn't possibly be that person. He was too ordinary, too quiet, and he seemed almost shy. The truth was, Anna had never really believed in luck or chance encounters. Her life had been built on hard work and endless sacrifice. She didn't expect miracles or sudden opportunities. To her, dreams of wealth belonged in movies or books, not in her daily reality of split shifts and overdue bills. Still, there was something about that evening that felt different, though she couldn't explain why. As the hours passed, The restaurant grew even busier. Anna hardly had time to breathe, yet she never once lost her smile. Customers noticed her energy, her ability to stay kind, even when things got chaotic. It was that quality, her quiet strength, that made her stand out. And it was that same quality that the man in the corner, the billionaire hiding behind ordinary clothes, was watching carefully. He wasn't just there to eat. He was there to see something most people never paid attention to: character. Anna could never have guessed that her actions that night would change her life forever. She thought it was just another shift, another long night of carrying trays and listening to endless chatter. But fate had a different plan. And the first step of that plan had already begun the moment the man walked through the restaurant's door and sat in her section. The city outside buzzed with life. Lights reflecting off wet pavement as cars rushed past. Inside, Anna kept working, unaware that her story was already being written in ways she couldn't imagine. She didn't know that her small acts of kindness, her honesty, and her courage would soon place her face to face with a decision that could alter her entire future. All she knew for now was that a stranger had come in for dinner, and she would serve him, as she did everyone else, with respect, patience, and a heart full of quiet determination. The night grew busier as the clock ticked closer to 8. The restaurant was full, every table buzzing with laughter, conversations, and the clatter of plates. Anna moved from one end of the floor to the other with quick steps, balancing trays and jotting down orders. She was tired, but she didn't allow it to show. The tips from nights like these often helped her cover part of the month's expenses, and she couldn't afford to lose a single dollar at one corner table. The man in the worn jacket continued to sit quietly, eating his meal without drawing much attention. He didn't rush, didn't complain, and didn't behave like the demanding customers Anna often dealt with. But while he kept to himself, another group sitting nearby noticed him. It was a table of 4 men in sharp suits, loud in their conversation, and quick to make jokes that weren't always polite. From the moment they sat down, Anna had sensed trouble. They snapped their fingers for service, complained about the menu, and made her repeat their order twice. She smiled politely through it all, reminding herself to stay professional. As the night went on, the suited men began drinking more, their laughter growing louder and their remarks sharper. It wasn't long before their attention shifted to the man in the corner booth. One of them leaned back in his chair and said loudly enough for half the restaurant to hear, "Look at that guy. Did he wander in here by mistake? This isn't a soup kitchen." The others laughed, clinking their glasses together. Anna heard the comment while she was serving coffee at a nearby table. She froze for a second, her eyes flicking toward the man they were mocking. He didn't react. He kept eating calmly, as if the words hadn't reached him at all. But Anna felt her chest tighten. She hated moments like this when people judged others simply by how they looked. She knew that kind of cruelty all too well. She had been mocked before for her worn-out shoes, her old phone, and the second-hand clothes she wore to work. The laughter at the suited table continued. Another man added, "Maybe he's hoping someone will pay for his dinner. People like that should know their place." They chuckled again, clearly enjoying themselves at the stranger's expense. Anna felt a surge of frustration. She glanced at the manager, but he was busy at the counter, too distracted to notice. Her heart pounded. Speaking up to rude customers could cost her the job. She had seen it happen before, waiters who got fired for arguing even when they were right. But standing silent while someone was insulted didn't feel right either. She tried to keep working, but her mind wouldn't rest. Every time she passed the suited table, she heard another comment, each one nastier than the last. The man in the corner still didn't respond. He seemed to have mastered the art of ignoring them, but Anna couldn't ignore it. She remembered her younger brother once coming home from school with tears in his eyes because other kids had laughed at his old backpack. She had told him then, "You don't have to stay quiet when someone disrespects you. People need to be reminded that kindness costs nothing." Now, her own words echoed in her head. Finally, as she delivered dessert to another table, she heard one of the men call out loudly, "Hey, waiter girl, are you sure he can even afford that meal? Maybe check his pockets before he runs off." The group roared with laughter. That was the moment Anna couldn't take it anymore. She set the tray down carefully, straightened her shoulders, and walked over to their table. Her voice was steady but firm as she spoke. "Excuse me, gentlemen. I'd appreciate it if you stopped making fun of that customer. He's here to enjoy his meal, just like you. Everyone deserves respect in this place." The laughter at the table died instantly. The men stared at her in surprise, clearly not expecting a waitress to confront them. One of them smirked and said, "We're just joking." "Don't take it so seriously." Anna shook her head. "It doesn't sound like a joke to me. And it certainly doesn't sound like one to the people around you. This restaurant is for everyone. If you can't respect that, maybe you should lower your voices or leave." The nearby tables had grown quieter, customers pretending not to listen but clearly following the scene. The suited men shifted uncomfortably under the sudden attention. One of them muttered, "Fine, whatever," and turned back to his drink. Anna's heart was racing. She knew she had taken a risk. Her job depended on good customer reviews, and angering a group like this could cause trouble. But as she turned away, she caught the eye of the man in the corner. He gave her a small, grateful smile, the kind that said more than words ever could. She went back to work, trying to calm herself. Doubt crept in. Had she done the right thing? What if the men complained to the manager? What if she lost her job tonight? But deep down, she also felt a strange sense of peace. For once, she had chosen courage over fear. She hadn't just served food. She had stood up for dignity. The suited men grew quieter after that. They still talked among themselves, but the mocking had stopped. Anna noticed other customers giving her approving looks. Small nods that told her they had noticed and respected what she had done. Yet, she didn't bask in their silent praise. Her mind was still restless, thinking about the bills waiting at home and the risk she had just taken. Meanwhile, the man she had defended continued his meal in silence. But his eyes followed her as she moved about the room. There was something thoughtful in his gaze, something observant, as though he was studying not just her actions, but her entire character. Anna didn't know it, but her decision to speak up had already planted the seeds of change in her life. She thought she was just defending a stranger from cruel words. She didn't realize she had caught the attention of someone whose influence could rewrite her future. All she knew at that moment was the pounding of her heart, the sting of fear mixed with pride, and the quiet relief that she hadn't allowed disrespect to go unchallenged. The rest of the night carried on as usual. But for Anna, the air felt different. She worked with the same energy as always, yet a question lingered in her mind. Had she been foolish, or had she done something that mattered? The restaurant had begun to settle into its late-night rhythm. Some of the earlier crowd had left, leaving behind empty plates and chairs pushed carelessly away from tables. The music played softly, and the hum of conversation dropped to a gentler tone. For Anna, however, her mind was anything but calm. She moved from one table to the next, carrying trays and refilling glasses. But inside, she was replaying the moment when she had spoken up. Every time she passed the group of suited men, her stomach tightened. Wondering if they would complain to the manager once they left, she couldn't take back what she had said. She didn't want to. Still, she knew the risk. People like them were used to being treated with extra care, and her bold words might not be forgotten easily. But whenever doubt filled her, she remembered the look on the quiet man's face when she defended him. A look of silent gratitude. It made the risk feel worth it. As the night went on, the suited men finally asked for their bill. They paid with a dismissive wave and walked out without another word, their arrogance trailing behind them like perfume. Anna let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. At least they hadn't made a scene with the manager. She hoped that was the end of it. But for the man in the corner, the night was far from over. He finished his meal slowly, sipping the last of his coffee. He watched Anna carefully as she worked her steady pace. The way she treated each customer with patience, and how she smiled even when her eyes revealed her exhaustion. To anyone else, she was just a waitress doing her job. To him, she was something much more. He had spent years surrounded by people who respected his wealth but rarely showed true kindness. What he had seen tonight was rare, almost precious. When Anna returned to clear his table, he looked up and spoke in a calm voice. "You didn't have to do what you did earlier, but you did it anyway." She paused, surprised by his words. "I couldn't just stand there," she said honestly. It wasn't right the way they talked to you. The man gave a small smile. Most people would have ignored it. You didn't. That says a lot. Anna shrugged, embarrassed by the attention. Maybe, but it could also cost me my job if they complain. Do you regret it? He asked, his tone curious. She shook her head without hesitation. No, respect is more important. A job can be replaced, but losing self-respect isn't worth it. Her words struck him deeply. He nodded, saying nothing more, and let her finish clearing the table. But inside his mind, a decision was already forming. A few minutes later, Anna brought the bill to his table. Take your time, she said politely, as she did with all her customers. He pulled out his wallet, but instead of simply handing her money, he placed the bill on the table and said, What's your name? Anna, she replied, a little hesitant. Anna? He repeated, as if testing how it sounded. You've been working here long? 3 years, she said. It pays the bills. He leaned back slightly, studying her. And is this what you want to do for the rest of your life? The question caught her off guard. She laughed lightly, thinking he was joking. Of course not. But life doesn't always give us choices. Sometimes we just have to do what we can. The man's eyes softened. But what if you were given a choice? What if a better door opened for you? Anna blinked, unsure how to respond. I'd walk through it, I guess. But opportunities like that don't usually come to people like me. The man smiled faintly, as if he knew something she didn't. He handed her the money for the bill, along with a tip larger than she had ever seen. Before she could thank him, he added quietly, Sometimes opportunities appear when you least expect them. Be ready for it. Then he stood up, thanked her politely, left the restaurant. Anna stood there for a moment, staring at the money in her hand, confused by his words. Customers often left tips, but no one had ever spoken to her like that, as if her life could change in an instant. She tucked the money into her apron and went back to work, trying to shake off the strange feeling. But outside the restaurant, the man walked into a sleek black car, waiting at the curb. The driver greeted him respectfully, and the car pulled away into the city night. In that moment, it became clear. This was no ordinary diner, no tired stranger in worn clothes. This was a billionaire who had come in disguise, seeking something real in a world filled with false smiles. And what he had found was a waitress with courage, honesty, and a heart that refused to stay silent in the face of cruelty. For Anna, the shift ended like every other night. She stacked chairs, wiped tables, and hung up her apron in the back. She walked home under the dim streetlights, thinking of her brother and her mother, wondering how she would stretch her earnings to cover everything. The large tip helped. It wasn't enough to ease her constant worries. She didn't know that her life was already beginning to change. The man she defended was not about to forget her words, her courage, or the way she carried herself. In his world, people chased his money, begged for his approval, and bent their values just to please him. But Anna had shown no interest in who he was. She had defended him when she thought he was powerless. That made all the difference. The turning point had quietly taken place. While Anna saw only another long day behind her, the billionaire saw something worth far more than wealth, a person he could trust, someone whose values could not be bought. And in the days to come, he would make a decision that would bring their two very different worlds crashing together in the most unexpected way. The next morning began like any other for Anna. She woke up early in her small apartment, cooked breakfast for her younger brother, and reminded him to study hard before heading to school. Her mother was resting on the couch, and Anna left her medicine and a note on the table before rushing out. Life for her was always on repeat: work, bills, responsibility, and little time for herself. She didn't think about the man from last night. To her, he was just another customer, though his strange words still echoed faintly in her mind. Be ready for it. At the restaurant, things carried on as usual. The same customers came in, the same orders were served, and the same tired smile stayed on Anna's face. She had learned to live each day with steady patience. But life has a way of surprising people when they least expect it. Late in the afternoon, while Anna was clearing a table, the restaurant doors opened, and a well-dressed man in a black suit walked in. He looked different from their usual crowd. His presence carried weight, like someone important had just stepped into the room. The manager hurried over to greet him, looking nervous. Anna glanced up, curious, but quickly returned to her work. She didn't have time for guesses or gossip. The suited man spoke quietly with the manager, who then turned to Anna with wide eyes. "Anna," he called, motioning her over. "This gentleman is asking for you." Her heart skipped. For her. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked over, unsure of what to expect. The man in the suit gave a polite smile. "Miss Anna, my employer would like to meet you. He asked me to bring you to him personally." Anna frowned, confused. "Your employer? Who is he?" "He was here last night," the man explained. "The gentleman in the corner booth." Her eyes widened. "The man with the jacket?" "Yes," the suited man nodded. "He would like a few minutes of your time." "If you're willing?" Anna looked around nervously. She still had tables to serve, and the thought of leaving her shift made her anxious. But her manager, who overheard, stepped forward quickly. "Go," he urged. "Don't worry about your shift right now." "This sounds important." Still unsure, Anna followed the suited man outside. Parked in front of the restaurant was a sleek black car that looked like it belonged to someone very rich. The driver opened the door for her, and inside sat the same man she had defended the night before. Except now, he wasn't in jeans and a worn jacket. He was dressed in a tailored suit, his posture confident, his presence commanding. For a moment, Anna didn't recognize him. He smiled warmly. "Hello, Anna. Thank you for coming." She froze, still standing by the car. You're not just a regular customer, are you?" He chuckled softly. "No, my name is Daniel. Most people know me as Daniel Harris. I run several companies in the city." The name hit her like a wave. Even someone like Anna, who rarely had time for news or magazines, had heard of Daniel Harris. His face had appeared in newspapers, his name linked to industries she couldn't even pronounce properly. He was one of the richest men in the country. Her mouth went dry as she tried to process what was happening. "You're a billionaire," she whispered. "Yes," he said simply. "But last night in that restaurant, I wasn't a billionaire. I was just a man being laughed at for looking ordinary. And you were the only person who stood up for me." Anna didn't know what to say. She felt her cheeks grow hot. "I only did what anyone should do." "It wasn't right, the way they treated you." Daniel shook his head. "Not everyone would have spoken up. Most people would have stayed silent to protect themselves. But you didn't hesitate. You showed courage, honesty, and respect. That's rare." Anna fidgeted nervously. "I didn't think it was anything special. I couldn't ignore it." "That's exactly why it matters," Daniel replied. He leaned forward slightly. "I want to make you an offer. Come work for me." Her eyes widened. "Work for you? Doing what?" "I can't promise the exact role yet," he admitted. "But I know this. People like you, people who have integrity, are the kind I want by my side. I'll train you, give you opportunities, and make sure you're paid fairly. You won't have to struggle the way you do now." Anna's mind spun. It sounded impossible. Just last night, she had been worrying about paying rent. Now a billionaire was offering her a job, a chance to step into a world she had never even imagined. "But why me?" she asked quietly. "I don't have special skills. I've only ever worked as a waitress." Daniel smiled. "Skills can be taught. Character cannot. And you've already shown me more character than most people. I've met in boardrooms filled with power and wealth." Tears stung her eyes, though she blinked them back quickly. She thought of her mother's medicines, her brother's education, the endless nights of worry. Could this really be the answer she had been hoping for? Still, fear tugged at her. What if I fail? What if I can't do what you expect? Daniel's voice softened. "Failure doesn't scare me. Dishonesty does. And you are not dishonest. You won't fail, Anna, not if you give it your best. I'll be there to guide you." For a long moment, she stood there, her heart racing. Part of her wanted to run, to hide from something so overwhelming. But another part of her whispered that this was the door she had once dreamed about, the one she never believed would open. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll try. Daniel's smile widened. Good. I'll have my assistant contact you tomorrow. We'll arrange everything. As the car drove away, Anna stood on the sidewalk, her hands trembling. Her world felt like it had tilted overnight. She walked back into the restaurant in a daze, barely hearing her manager's questions or her coworkers' curious stares. All she could think about was the offer that had just been placed in her hands. That night, when she returned home, she told her mother and brother everything. At first, they thought she was joking. But when she described the car, the suit, the man, and the way he had spoken, their disbelief slowly turned into excitement. Her mother's tired eyes filled with tears of pride, and her brother grinned wider than she had seen in years. Anna lay awake in bed long after everyone else had fallen asleep. Her mind was filled with possibilities she had never dared to imagine. New clothes, a real office job, enough money to cover their bills. Maybe even a future where her brother could go to college without worrying about debt. But more than the material dreams, she felt something deeper, the realization that one act of courage, one moment of standing up for what was right, had changed everything. She thought about Daniel's words again. Skills can be taught. Character cannot. For the first time in her life, she believed that who she was, not just what she could do, was valuable. And with that belief, she drifted off to sleep, ready to face whatever came next. Anna's life began to change in ways she had never dreamed of. When she stepped into Daniel's company for the first time, she felt out of place. The tall glass building stood like a giant in the city, its polished walls reflecting the sky. Inside, everything was spotless, shiny floors, quiet elevators, people in suits carrying laptops and talking confidently. Anna felt small in her plain dress and simple shoes. But she remembered Daniel's words. Skills can be taught, character cannot. She kept repeating it in her head as she walked nervously to the reception desk. Daniel's assistant greeted her warmly and showed her around. Anna was introduced to a team who worked on different projects. At first, she didn't understand half of what they said. Words like strategy, investments, and expansion flew over her head. She nodded politely, feeling lost. But instead of mocking her, the team treated her with respect because Daniel had spoken highly of her. They knew she was important to him, and they saw her not just as a waitress, but as someone with potential. The first few weeks were not easy. Anna made mistakes, forgot details, and sometimes felt overwhelmed by the speed at which everyone worked. There were moments when she wanted to give up, moments when she thought, maybe I don't belong here. But each time, she reminded herself of the struggles she had faced before. She had survived long shifts at the restaurant, rude customers, financial stress, and sleepless nights. If she could handle all that, she could learn this too. Daniel checked on her often. He wasn't just a boss to her. He became a mentor. He gave her small tasks, at first taking notes, organizing schedules, greeting visitors. Slowly, he increased her responsibilities. When she hesitated, he encouraged her. When she failed, he reminded her that mistakes were part of learning. His belief in her gave her strength. Months passed, and Anna began to grow more confident. She learned how to use new computer programs, how to write reports, how to communicate with clients. More importantly, she learned to trust herself. She no longer walked with her head down. She carried herself with quiet confidence, the same way she had in the restaurant when she defended Daniel. That moment had become the foundation of her new life. At home, things improved as well. Her mother no longer worried about medicine bills, and her brother no longer feared being pulled out of school. Anna's paycheck was more than enough to cover expenses, and for the first time in years, she was able to save money. She even bought her brother new books and a backpack, remembering the pain in his eyes when he used to be mocked for his old one. The joy on his face was worth more to Anna than any salary. But beyond the material changes, there was something deeper inside Anna. She often thought back to the night in the restaurant, the night that changed everything. She realized that it wasn't luck that had brought Daniel into her life. It was a choice to speak up when it was easier to stay silent. A choice to defend someone without knowing who he really was. That single moment of courage had created a ripple that grew bigger with each passing day. Daniel often reminded her of this too. One evening, after a long day of meetings, he said to her, "Do you see how far you've come, Anna? And it all started because you refused to accept disrespect. That one decision revealed who you are. Never forget that." Anna carried those words with her like a treasure. She began to realize that life was not just about working hard to survive. It was about living with values, making choices that reflected her true self. She thought of all the people she had served in the restaurant, some kind, some rude, some indifferent. She remembered how easy it was for people to judge others by their appearance, and how dangerous it was to stay silent in the face of injustice. Her journey taught her something she wished everyone could understand. Opportunities may not always come in the form of money or status. Sometimes, opportunities come disguised as challenges, moments when you have to decide whether to stay quiet or speak up. Those choices, small as they seem, can shape your future. As the years went on, Anna became more than just an employee in Daniel's company. She rose to a position where she managed teams, guided projects, and helped new employees adjust to the work environment. She always treated them with kindness, remembering her own struggles when she was new. Many of them admired her, not just for her work, but for her story. She never boasted about it, but word spread naturally about how she had once been a waitress and how a single act of courage had changed her life. Her story inspired others, especially those who felt small or powerless. Whenever someone doubted themselves, Anna would smile and say, "I used to doubt myself too." But character is stronger than fear. Believe in what's right, and the rest will follow. Even in her success, Anna never forgot where she came from. She often visited the restaurant where it all began. The same tables, the same smell of food, the same tired faces of waiters running back and forth, it all reminded her of her journey. Sometimes she would leave generous tips for the staff, knowing exactly how much those tips meant. She wanted them to feel the hope she once longed for. Daniel remained a constant figure in her life, not just as her boss, but as a friend and mentor. Their bond was built on mutual respect. He never treated her like someone below him, and she never treated him like a man defined only by his wealth. They both valued honesty and courage above everything else. Looking back, Anna often reflected on the strange twist of fate. If she had stayed silent that night, if she had chosen fear over courage, she would still be struggling in the restaurant, counting coins to pay for rent and medicine. She realized that life sometimes tested people in unexpected ways, offering them chances disguised as risks, and those who dared to choose the harder path often found the greatest rewards. Anna's story became a reminder to her family, her co-workers, and even to herself that wealth and status are not what make a person valuable. What truly matters is how one treats others and the choices one makes when no one is watching. Years later, when her brother graduated from college and thanked her for all her sacrifices, Anna smiled through her tears. She knew that everything she had endured, every long night of hard work, every moment of doubt had led her to this point. And it all started with a single choice to defend a stranger. She often thought of her younger self, tired and worried, standing in that noisy restaurant. If she could speak to that version of herself now, she would say, "Don't be afraid. This moment will change your life. Your courage is worth more than you know." And in her heart, she hoped that everyone, no matter how ordinary they felt, would understand the same truth. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage create the biggest changes.